Hello and welcome back to Good Game Nation, where we bring you all things TCG. My name is Preston. I'm here with Sam. Say hello.
Hello, we're back talking about One Piece.
Yeah, we have a new set to talk about, so there's only a few things we can do here. And you know what it said on the title and the thumbnail already, so you know we're doing a tier list today. We're doing this one a little bit different because we're up to like 49 liters. We're getting up there. So we already set our lower half of the bracket because we really don't want to say how bad we think Shanks is. I know he can be explosive and fun, uh, but most of the time, if you're playing competitive, you're not going to be playing Shanks. You'll probably play it on Sim to troll. I don't think you're playing it anywhere else. So that's basically what the bottom half is. You're not going to need to hear us talk about how we think Iceberg is bad.
Oof.
Um, I'm just talking shit at this point about purple. But what we
Absolutely.
can, yeah, but what we can do is talk about the like 20 or so leaders that we think are worth mentioning for the active meta.
Definitely, definitely. And two things: if you run into a Shanks on Sims, it's probably me. And two, if there's in the comments, let us know the leaders that are placed. If you want us to talk about them in the comments, we will. There's definitely a lot of interesting things about some of these leaders. So again, hit us up in the comments, and we'll definitely get back to you. But he's absolutely right. There's way too many leaders, so we have to make this a little speedier. So we're going to talk about the competitive ones, and we're just going to go in order. And we're going to talk about Law. And to be honest, it would shock me if Law was poor in any format. I think we had one format where Law just disappeared, but he came roaring back. And to put Law anywhere below good feels like an insult to what he has done for the game.
Yeah, and Law's always going to do what he does. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for Law to succeed. Um, the interesting thing will be is if we ever incorporate cards past set two in Law.
Never going to
I
happen.
think
You're
we just have
ridiculous.
to have a good set
We
that
got Nami. There we got that Robin. That Robin, I think, will find their way into that deck.
fair,
So you never
very
know.
fair. But yeah, I think Law's always going to do really well. I think it's the same as Zoro. He's always going to have a very high potential to good status. I think Betty's going to threaten that in a little
Maybe.
bit just because it's going to be a little bit more overwhelming. But Zoro, we've been saying it since set one, is such a good utility for any archetype that you'll probably find something for it.
Yeah, it again, same as Law. It feels insulting putting him anything lower, and he'll make use of any format. We saw that with Whitebeard. We might see that with the Army, because that synergy is there too. So it's hard to really knock a leader that can just boost your entire team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's red. That's what red does. We're gonna keep going with this red, and I think this might be the slight downfall of the Whitebeard Pirates.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been S tier, high A tier. I think it's falling to B tier or C tier now. I think the newest
Ooh.
stuff is so much more explosive
Yeah.
that Whitebeard's not getting a chance to shine.
Yeah.
Being a little bit of a slower deck, in my opinion. Very high power output, but that comes turn three, four, and five. Um, if your new leaders are winning on turn two or three, you're never getting your chance to play your Whitebeard in a deck that's not able to ramp. So I
Right.
think he's falling. Where do you think Whitebeard lands?
I dropped him potential really quick while you were talking, and that feels wrong. I really want to put him in good. I think the format has been there's a specific. We're gonna get to him. There's a leader that I think that really hurts his output. So I think he might be a little reliant on how the format looks. The cards in Whitebeard are still good. These are still good cards. So I think he might just be a little bit more meta dependent. So I'm gonna stick him at low, like the back end of good. And I think his value really is going to shift depending on the meta itself. He's not the meta definer anymore, which
Right.
is the biggest note here.
Yeah, I think there's a huge shift in this meta that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I think the most exciting time if you're new to this game to get in because you
Yeah.
could probably pick up pretty much any of the leaders that we left on the board and have a great time. And most likely, if you're already played TCG, win tournaments because we kind of left the top tiers
Yeah.
to talk about.
And it follows suit with Whitebeard. Ace is someone that is always just probably a tier down from Whitebeard, and I think that's the same here in the West with Whitebeard. The 9-drop CC being only limited to 1. Ace has suffered greatly compared to what he did in the East in the same format. And I do think it stays similar. I do think Whitebeard's probably still slightly better. Ace does have a lot of room to build with his event cards. Obviously, he runs a different type of format. So there's always a little room for Ace to do well, especially with the right pilot. So I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff, but I definitely think we're going to see much less Ace going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. The next leader is going to be Katakuri. Katakuri has only gotten stronger since he debuted. I still think he's a very good leader. Preston, what do you think?
I think he's very good. I think he's probably the top of good.
That's probably
I
fair.
I think maybe the couple, 3 or 4 that we end up putting in best, he might lose to, but he's probably one of the best aggressive leaders still.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to win quickly, or sustain against the quick stuff, you probably have a good potential with Katakuri. Um, I think we undervalued yellow up to this point, generally speaking on this channel. Uh, but it's always overperformed itself in the West. So
Oh yeah.
I think that it's only going to do good things in this set. There might be other leaders that we put above it just because I think there's some really broken stuff that's happening right now.
And 10cc Big Mom is hard to vote against, and that's the only card I'm picturing right now. Like, they have a lot of good cards, of course, but 10-drop Big Mom, until there's a clear answer for that woman, I do not putting Katakuri anything lower than good.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah,
That's a game changer for sure.
devastating card.
Hmm.
Lucci. We didn't place Lucci even though he didn't really place crazy last format. He definitely saw a downtick from his intro. But we did get a new Lucci card, and I feel like that was worthy enough to at least talk about Lucci a little bit.
Hmm.
I think out of the black leaders that we're gonna get to, it's probably on the lower side. Maybe high potential, low good, low potential, something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that black in general is a really good color. It has a lot of synergy, and I don't think it's really broken off too far from its like navy roots. I know that Rebecca and Desrosa has its own thing going, but for like the majority of time, even now, we're getting a lot of CP support, and you could always bring this leader. It has a really interesting way to disrupt your opponent with its effect, and they might not really see it coming. So it's a nice, like maybe counter meta, mid meta, sway the tides a little bit.
Yeah, they gained a new target with Air Door. They gained a new target with Bluno. So I definitely see this deck still staying alive. Yeah, it's still too aggressive to really truly ignore. So I
Hmm.
hope we get to see more of the Lucci.
Hmm.
Um, the next leader would be the Nami. I think this is the one we probably talked about the most off camera. Uh,
Yeah.
Nami's an interesting leader, very unique, and I think the meta is curating a little more towards her. I think I'm leaning more towards good with Nami. What about you?
I think it is either potential or fun, but meh. Mostly because it's such a hard leader. We had our experiences with it. It got a little bit of support in the last set, but I just unless you play perfectly, I feel like it's not a good deck. So in my hands, avoiding it. I can't keep my mind straight with it. Um, but on a good pilot or a decent pilot, even you might be able to outlast these other leaders that uh, are doing other things, and you can just do your thing and play solitaire and respond. That's all that that deck does is all responses. So if you're able to basically play the same build from a set and a half ago, you probably will do okay. But also, I feel like there's a lot of people that pick up Nami hoping to do really well and then like X3 drop with it. I think it's really easy to X3 drop with Nami.
Yeah.
Um, so,
I think that's fair. They gained the oh god, the filler girl. I'm never gonna remember her name.
Apis.
Apis, thank you.
Or Apis, something like that.
Yeah, they gained her, so they did gain a couple cards, and they're always on the window. And I think the meta for Nami is shifting correctly. If we're going away from hyper aggressive to more of a control style, which I think we are, I think Nami definitely has more room to shine. But I'm going to put her in potential. That's kind of the middle where we're at. But let us know in the comments. Do we think Nami has a higher ceiling? Good. Is Preston right? She's going to not do this well this meta? Let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, for sure. I think the next leader is one that you wanted to talk about the most because it's sitting somewhere special for you, I think.
Every time we do this tier list, I think there's always one or two leaders that were like, this might be its time to shine. And we're always wrong. There's one time, I think we called Queen doing well early, but then Queen fell off. But this time it's Crocodile for me. I'm going to put him in potential. Hear me out. I think, again, the format is shifting into a way that I think Crocodile has some exploits. Am I wrong? Probably. But I think that if we're going to look at Crocodile for its best chance to have a good format, I think this might be the one. Purple saw better cards, finally. I'm looking at that Zoro specifically. I think Yellow gained its own Radical Beam. That's another huge card for Yellow. I think they gain a little bit here. But we'll see. Preston, where would you, just so the viewers know, where would you put Crocodile?
I think he's either in Fun Butt or Void, but Yellow is such a good character, a good color right now, and has a lot of stuff to play differently. So playing the Yellow Yamato from the last set to be able to gain life, or playing, oh goodness, the Katakuri from the first Yellow set. And then you have your purple stuff, like you were saying, the Zoro's really good. You have Ramp in purple. You have all of the purple Baroque work stuff that came with this leader, which you probably only play one or two of them. But there's so many different variations you could get. If someone wanted to, I think they could take this leader all the way, but most of the time you're going to go for the more flashy stuff. And I think that's what hurts a lot of these leaders, is there's always going to be a Whitebeard Pirates that just as flashy and easier to win with. I think it's the game's still too young for us to play the interesting thing first, unless you're just really having fun. In competitive scene, you're going to be playing the Enels and the Luffys and the Luffys and the Luffys and stuff like that over the more interesting picks. So I do think that this leader could have its heyday. I don't know if it's now.
Guy can dream. The next, I'm rooting for purple. I swear I am. Well, they are doing well right now, though. At least. Then we're looking at the green purple Doflamingo. This is another interesting leader that received a second full set of support. This is a very unique spot. Not many leaders have received that kind of support. Where are we putting him?
I think he's high potential, or even higher, like maybe mid good. He has a couple different decks that he can play, so you can confuse, like your opponent might not know if you're coming in full film or if you're coming full family. You could always switch it up and start playing some of the purple stuff that came out. Throw the Zoros in there. Purple has a lot of mystery with it, and it also has the reliables like Judgment and stuff like that. You could throw Magellan in this. Like, you can play a lot of really weird shit with this leader and have less drawbacks because his leader effect is so good. I think it's going to do incredible in the West. I don't know where it lands because, again, the top of this, I think, is disgusting in this tier list. So it's either in like mid good, just because it just has so much potential in different ways than the potential tier actually has. What do you think?
No, I am a huge fan of this leader as well. It's probably a Western thing. I love the utility and the defensive options that Doflamingo gives you. We're going to talk about Rosinante in a little bit, but the the family style of this deck is a lot of fun. It takes a lot of practice to be good at. The film stuff is already a proven winner with this deck as well, and it only got better. And I think Purple offers. It might not be a lot of utility cards, but the couple that it does offer, which you only have space for a couple anyway in this deck, I think gives it a lot of room to be very successful. And again, with the meta shifting more to control, I really think Dofi has an opportunity here to be very, very good, or not show up at all. But I do think the deck is very good and definitely should be on your radar when you're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
for sure.
Next, we would have some of the ending up the blue leaders before we get to the new stuff. We're getting into Queen. I think Queen lands a potential. I think we had him in potential last tier list. We know that it's got good cards. Blue and yellow are both very good colors. But I think there's just better leaders on the table, plain and simple.
For sure. We saw it do really well at the beginning. There's a little bit of a surprise factor with new leaders. I think it might take a little bit too much time for it to come online in its full effect. So I think that's probably why it's falling down a little bit here. But like we've been saying, yellow is really good. We might not say it enough, but blue is a really interesting color right now and has the potential to just change the way this game is played because it has so much control. So we could probably see a completely different Queen deck than we saw from last format that would throw everybody off and still do well because it still has that like lasting power to gain life and stuff like that. So it could be ridiculous. Most likely it's going to be like potential, or if it doesn't continue to get better, it will probably fall on our list pretty easily as just as something to ignore and not worry about.
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely right. The next leader would be Rebecca. This is another very, very strong leader. Is this our first best of the best?
I think so. I think it got better. It got some support. It didn't get a full set like Dofi did, but it got some cards, and they're pretty nasty. So I do think that it got better. I think the stuff that it came out with made it S tier last set, and so I think it's best of the best again.
Yeah, I really like the Rebecca character card. Manshuri, I hope I said that right.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very good cards. Definitely going to bolster this deck. Has a very clear win condition. If we're talking about decks that are, I don't want to say easier to play because that's an insult, but if we're comparing Nami to Rebecca, this is probably a much easier deck to pilot.
Yes,
and you have
absolutely.
a lot of powerful cards. I'm still looking at that Sabo as one of the best cards in this game. Then you have blue, which is President keeps using the word interesting. I'm going to use the word oppressive. There's so many just nasty cards in blue right now. You can't really prepare for them all, and with that, you have opportunity to really surprise people. So it's hard to imagine this deck falling out of this. I don't know. The other decks in the best of the best might be a problem for her, but it's hard to imagine her not showing up in numbers for these regionals.
Yeah, for sure.
And now, hopefully, for what you guys are waiting for, getting into the set 5 stuff.
Set 5 with the 3 captains.
And the 3 captains. Preston, is there one you want to start with?
Do you want to go set 5 or 3 captains? For 3 captains, we could just put Kid down towards the bottom. I think when we're looking at these 3 leaders, besides the fact that I've learned while playing this game that I'm a Kid stan and I'm all for him, he's probably the worst of these 3, which isn't saying too much because they're both really good leaders. Like all 3 of them should be in potential or higher. I think that this Kid, just based off of the meta and what we've done so far, is going in the fun section.
Yeah.
I'll probably play it because it's Kid. I've learned that about myself, that I can't help but play Kid.
I love that.
Gonna have to talk to a therapist about that.
Yeah, it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy. Yeah, I'll follow suit. I think potential is probably fair for all of them. I'm gonna put Kid in fun though, because I don't. It's hard for me to. It's hard for me to imagine its place in the meta right now. I could easily be proven wrong. I'm hoping proven wrong because I'm rooting for the Kid. And but for Law, I think Law belongs in potential, probably a little lower than some of these other leaders we have up here. The color combo is very good. And it really helps Purple a lot, getting the next best color as your partner. I think Law can do a lot of flashy things. I wish the Heart Pirates in these cards were a little bit better. Same for the Kid Pirates. but it is what it is.
Yeah. And where do you put the Luffy? I know you like the Luffy, but where would you put it and where does it actually land?
So for me personally, it's best, but we also have to factor in if Whitebeard's going to be still limited to one here in the West. If it's still limited to one, it's probably going to go into fun, but But in the meta where it's four, it's hard for me to imagine. I think it's going to teeter. I think this deck's really going to depend on where the meta's at. I don't think it's a very... there's some matchups that are very unforgiving, I think, for this leader. So for that, it's probably in high potential, low good. It's probably the potential for now. I haven't seen too many Eastern players pick this deck up or this leader up itself. But it's hard when you have so much ramp and you have a 6k base power. Imagine it being anything lower than potential.
Yeah, I think it could very well be the best here in the West. It's if you can get to your end game before they get to their mid game. I've seen other games be very toxic in that sense. So we'll have to see what happens as the game evolves. That's a leader that will probably stay on our radar for a while.
Absolutely.
Just based off of its nastiness. If purple gets a really good set, oh man, it's gonna be gross.
Hey, you're asking for too much right now. Gonna get into the actual set 5 leaders. I'm really excited to get into some of these Revolution Army stuff because that was probably one of the bigger surprises. I didn't know how good some of the stuff was going to be, and it's probably the best standalone color. Red did it again. They drop in bangers.
Every time.
It's Motown. It's dropping hits after hits. It's unfair for the other colors. It really is. And it's if we're starting with. I'll start with Betty. I think Betty is the one that's definitely gotten the biggest send off. People are really loving Betty as a leader. She's very flashy. There's a lot of power coming out of Betty. It's probably slightly better than Whitebeard right now, slightly, just because the matchups are a little bit better for her in this current format. It's mostly matchup based. If we're going off decks, Whitebeard's probably slightly better. But if we're looking at matchups as a wide, I think Betty does slightly better into everything than Whitebeard does. And for that, I'm putting her in mid-low good.
Yeah, and the fact that it's Revolutionary Army or Trigger that gain their effects, any of the yellow cards that you throw in there is just another target. Obviously, Sanji. Yeah, the Sanji, you have a bunch of different cards that I can't think of off the top of my head because we're so deep into this episode. Right. But yellow has a lot of good trigger cards. We've often seen yellow considered like the if you hit triggers you win. So all of those cards that you hit triggers with become threats with this leader, and that's super interesting. We'll have to see what people do with it because they could do nothing and then it doesn't matter. But between the Revolutionary Army cards and cards with trigger, all threats. Yeah, tons of threats, which is really interesting and cool.
Beige. Yeah, there's tons of nasty trigger cards.
That's what it was. It was the beige.
Tons of nasty cards coming out of yellow. So, and I think there's a lot of room to deck build too. And if we're looking at the next one, which is Sabo, if it was me picking, I think Sabo is a little more annoying than Betty. I think Betty is definitely better at closing games, which is probably a higher stock. But Sabo gets access to the black Sabo, which is almost enough for me to put him in potential off that alone. Gives you probably the best revolutionary card in the game. And being able to save something gives you so much presence on the board. I think matchups are going to be interesting for him. Red-black has not been a good color already. We already have this color combination, so if we're looking at that, I think you have to put Sabo slightly lower than Betty. But it would not shock me in the lightest if Sabo was the better out of the two and that was the one that took off. That would not shock me in the least.
Yeah, a lot of the revolutionary stuff starts at 5k, so it's very easily saving anything on the board and making your opponent commit 2 attacks to something that they potentially thought they didn't have to could be really disruptive and tilting. So it's an interesting way to play the game at a different level. So looking forward to seeing those matches when we start to see some streams of this set.
Absolutely. What would you like to talk about next, Preston? Which one?
Let's see who's next. We can do Rosinante, and we'll leave the good ones for last.
Rosinante. This is a really hard leader to read. I've very limited testing with them. I, I'm personally not a fan. I don't want to be mean, but he might be my only avoid out of the new leaders. But probably being nice, he probably belongs in fun. But this is a very good color combination. That's undeniable. These are two very good utility colors. You can do a lot of different things here. You do have access to different Doflamingo pirates as well. There is the SR Dofi from the first set. That's very, very good. So you can even add the peak element to your Dofi family deck. I think the utility is way lower though when you compare him with the green purple Dofi leader though. So for that reason, he's probably fun, but what do you think?
Yeah, at best he could land in potential. I think he's going to be very annoying if you play him in the way that like the first person that mentioned this leader of blocking for your searchers. I was like, oh, that's obnoxious.
It's very annoying.
But they only get to do it once, so it's only annoying as long as you don't have a response. Like when there's always a blocker on board, you're going to play a little bit differently, and that might be enough to throw off some people, so you might get some cheeky wins. Um, but I think most of the stuff that we've talked about is going to end up being played, and it's going to be playing at a higher level. So fun is probably the least or the most generous position we can give him right now.
Right, and I want to be proven wrong. So please, in the comments, let us know: is Rosinante real, or are we right? That's what we really want to know.
Yeah.
And out of these three leaders, I think Enel is the most interesting to me because I've been alluding to him. I'm gonna put him slightly lower on best of best than Rebecca. Pros for Enel, super annoying. This leader is very hard to get rid of. Big reason why Whitebeard is going down. Big reason why red purple Luffy is gonna struggle off the gate. Um, Making the game go longer gives these dual color leaders issues. And I think that's why we're seeing a decline in them right now, at least slight decline, not a large decline, slightly. Big con, all of his cards suck. There wasn't any really great yellow cards from the set. There's a couple that we are playing, very few. We're basing it off previous sets mostly. That's probably its biggest drawback. Its deck building is probably very limited. So it's best of the best, but it's probably a little lower than the rest of them.
Yeah, it definitely has the fear that yellow set in my mind uh, from the very beginning. Like when we started seeing the big mom stuff, and it's like, oh, you're gonna regain life and stuff like that. This Enel gives me that fear that he's never gonna die, and it's gonna be really annoying, and you're just gonna be really annoyed that you played a great game and still lost.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where Enel lands. You're right, his set wasn't good, but the previous sets were probably good
Amazing.
enough. Yeah, exactly. So this finds a weird position where they probably had to not give him perfect support
Right. Or he'd be
because
gross.
if you give one or two cards that work well together in this set, you pair them with the other ones that did well. You end with Yamato, you end with an Enel that adds life, and it's not a fun game to play. So this is probably the best way to end with Enel is
Yeah.
to have a very balanced version because they could have really easily screwed up in concept and made this broken. Um, Bandai's learning from their mistakes, I think, and
Yeah.
they're making a more balanced game. And Enel's still freaking broken, so I think he's staying in best of best. We'll have to see if he
It's
gets support. He's tier 0, so
Enel has to watch out though. There's the reason I have Nami in potential. Enel does probably not want to see any Nami players.
right.
Enel definitely lacks KO power. Not being able to play the 10cc Big Mom is a huge, huge drawback for Enel. The reason Katakuri is still very high on our list, honestly.
Hmm.
Enel probably definitely does not want to see any Nami. So if Enel raises in popularity, so does Nami.
Yeah,
Boom.
it's fair.
Next,
Sakazuki,
Sakazuki. What do you think?
another best of best. This leader is going to be disruptive. It has a really great effect. Black has only gotten better. We were talking about it earlier. with Lucci and with Rebecca. Black's just keeps on getting better. You talked about blue being oppressive, and this leader has both. So his activate main is great. I think being able to get more cards through and cycling is going to be incredible. I think his only downside is being 4 life. Everything else about him is great. Art is great. Perfect card. Best of best.
Yeah, I'm putting him in the first slot as best of best too. I think
Yeah.
when we're thinking about what cards are the best cards to play, I feel like 70% of them are in blue and in black.
Hmm.
And we saw this for Rebecca. I'm gonna be honest. When a leader says they can't attack, I immediately write them off.
Oh yeah.
Especially when I read them.
Hmm.
I definitely oversaw the event card that gave that really big Luffy more power.
Hmm.
That's probably the biggest reason. But this leader can attack.
Yeah.
That's the hugest thing right there. This is probably a slightly better Rebecca. You can play
Hmm.
a lot of the same things. You have access to the nasty Sabo. The new Adam Sandler is very good as well because you could search him.
Or
There's
Celino.
that guy. He looks just like him. I'm sorry.
I know it's
Uh,
so good.
it's a very, very annoying deck. Very, very oppressive. It's going to give a lot of these fun but decks a lot of problems. And it's the reason the fun but and avoid are slightly growing is because of decks like this. Decks like Enel. I'm going to put Luffy up here too. We'll get to him.
Yeah.
But these leaders are very, very oppressive right now. And the counterplay is going to probably create these little triangle metas probably later on in the season. Probably later to be seen. We might be wrong on that one, but Sakazuki is definitely going to give a lot of these good but potential decks a lot of problems.
Yeah, I agree. Which leaves us with Luffy, which is another S tier leader, best of the best. The leader is incredible, even though all of the cards surrounding purple are trash. I'm gonna shit talk purple until it gets a set that's cohesive
Never.
and alone. But this leader is purple, and it's gonna be running the best purple cards that it can.
Yep.
I've seen some with Magellan because FU. I've seen some with
Magellan's awesome in a Katakuri, so
it's just I've seen so many different builds with this already,
yeah.
and they're just having fun with this leader because he has the speed.
Yep.
This leader is super fast, maybe little bit slower than red purple, but it has the life on its side to be able to do it
Yep.
repeatedly.
Yep.
Um, and then the few good cards from this set that are making it better, which are what I've seen people do, is the 2K counters in
Yep.
Zoro.
Yeah.
Um, because you
That's all
can.
you need.
It's like, I guess
That's all you
there's
need.
other 2K counters, but I guess they have their upsides. But all of the like every set we go, oh, that's a good purple card. I wish the rest of them would help. You're throwing it into this deck,
Yep.
and you're just making just a really annoying deck that's finally becoming something. I do think the set 5 purple stuff is pretty trash and limiting. But this leader is top tier. It could be very similar to what happened to Enel in my head.
Yep.
Game designers went, "Oh no, we have to nerf
Oops.
some of this stuff."
Yep.
Maybe I don't know. It's just a good leader, and I wish Purple could have uh, a more cohesive set. But it's finally getting its chance. I don't think it's been good since Kaido before set
Oof.
one really even hit
Oof.
hit the market. So.
Was that week 1 or week 2 Kaido? Is that what we're Oof, rough. Um,
Yeah, a year and a half ago
ye-
or something like that.
yeah, this Luffy has one pro in its speed. There is
Mhm.
that is the only pro we have in 5 life.
Yeah.
If the red purple Luffy had 4 life, we probably would never even talk about the 5 drop purple Luffy. But its speed, it's very similar to it now. I love that you said that. Its set sucked. It's relying very heavily on this leader effect. So I think the deck building is very limited. So if I were to picture 2 decks that were going to fall out of best of the best later on in the meta, I would imagine it's these 2. I think they're very limited in what they can do, but what they do is excellent. It ramp in any game with like that Bandai has done. I'm thinking mostly Dragon Ball because I didn't play very much Digimon. Ramp was very abusive very early on and stayed very abusive. Colors, people were building so you can play the ramp. So ramp is very effective in these types of games. So it's always going to be on the radar. We said that for Kaido, and it's still true to this day for this Luffy. But purple's biggest downfall is 90% of the cards suck. So we're going to stick the 10% in the deck and pray that it works. We have good cards that we can ramp to, thank God. And it's actually only 2 cards, to be honest, that we can ramp to. So it does hinge on these couple factors, but the speed really helps, and it's going to lean on it. And until we can come up with a good counter, it's going to stick around.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm happy that a purple leader's at the top.
Woo, we did it.
I'll continue to shit on it, but it's doing well, so I'm happy about it. I'm happy that we're seeing less red in general, and I'm super happy to see a set really come in and completely change the face of this game. There's so many set 5 leaders at the top of our list, and everything else kind of falls below it, and that's maybe a bad thing for players to need to pick up all the new stuff, but great for the health of a game. I think it's lovely that we're getting a huge shift. I would not want to cover 8 more weeks of Whitebeard, so I'm happy to be able to cover any of these best of best decks for the next 3 months. Super exciting times. Happy that it's happening finally.
Yeah, as a card game player, I'm wondering, the word power creep starts to creep into my head. But I think compared to the games that I've played before, I think the meta was slightly unhealthy. I think Whitebeard was dominating way too long. There's no reason. You could even say that for Law and Zoro. They've been dominant for so long. I think, and it's been on the hinge of red having great sets and great leaders when most of the other colors have one or the other. But, you know, I'm here for the shift, and I'm definitely just as excited to cover Enel and Sakazuki over Whitebeard. So,
for sure.
That is our tier list video. I'll make sure I'll put the PNG or the JPEG down in the description if you guys want to look at it. But that covers it. Let us know in the comments. Which ones did we miss on? Which ones were we right, wrong? You're crazy. Crocodile's best of the best. You don't know what you're talking about. Let us know in the comments where we hit, where we missed.
Absolutely.
And if you're still here after almost 40 minutes of us talking about, we really wanted this to be 25 minutes, I promise you. If you're still here, let us know. Please do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and bye-bye.
Peace.
Bye-bye. Da, da, da.
Did you see what the Shanks promo does?
No, this is what Shanks promo?
There's a
One
new
from the
Shanks
film?
promo. It's a live action one. You discard cards from your hand to gain power, and I think it's the most hilarious thematic card to get rid of your hand to gain power.
That's absolutely amazing. Wow, what a funny card.
Yeah, that's great.